Hello and welcome to episode 1213 of The Sleeper and the Bust. It is Monday, September 4th. I'm your host, Paul Sporer, joined this morning by both Justin Mason and our special guest, Ray Murphy. Good morning, gentlemen. What's up, Justin?
Just another day in paradise trying to figure out whether I should start Paul Blackburn or Peter Lambert this week, or a middle reliever for Baltimore. Like it's just
What a
that,
decision.
it's that kind of year.
That's peak September baseball, I would say, right? You know, we don't have the 40-man call-ups anymore, which is good, but there's still some wonky decisions coming down the stretch for a lot of leagues. And Ray Murphy from Baseball HQ, how's it going this morning?
Doing great, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Appreciate you joining us. We're, of course, going to talk about the wonderful First Pitch Arizona convention that is coming up in November. We'll get to that toward the end of the show here, but we're going to talk a little bit of news and notes. Actually, a couple teams in the AL East dominating our news and notes here, 2 for the Yankees, 2 for the Orioles. Then we're going to get into the poll hitter early draft, the Poll Hitter podcast run by Rob DiPietro. They did a 7-round draft with a bunch of folks from the industry, names that you would recognize, like Baseball HQ's own Ryan Bloomfield, for example, Bubba, tons of other folks there. You got 15-teamer, 7 rounds, lots of interesting stuff happening. I think it would be totally different if it was done today and it was just done a few weeks ago. Like, I think we're already at that point where you could run it right back and there'd be a lot of differences, but we'll get into that a bit more here later. But let's start with some news and notes. Let's start with the Yankees here. And an interesting waiver guy yesterday in some spots was Michael King, who is being stretched out as a potential starter for the Yankees. And Justin, I used to mention on almost every episode something out of the park baseball related. And it probably got annoying how often I talked about, well, I did this in out of the park baseball. One of the things that happened out of the park baseball was that Michael King converted into a starter, and it went very well. I did this last year, and he became really good. Now, does that mean because he can do it in a video game, he can do it in real life? No, but the point was deep arsenal for a reliever, really good stuff. It's a matter of kind of stretching him out. And now after his last 2 starts, 61 and 69 pitches, looking pretty nice. 5 innings of 1-run ball at Houston. Justin, I want to start with you. Is Michael King a viable potential starter down the stretch here? And if so, what formats?
I mean, I think he has to be, especially in deeper formats. I mean, at this point, you are like making decisions on starting guys like Peter Lambert, right? Like,
yeah.
So Peter Lambert
only on the road, by the way, if you're going to start Lambert.
But he's going to start on the road this week, and so like, man, I kind of wish I had Michael King to roll with this week. He's got a nice little start home versus Milwaukee this week. I think you're just playing matchups in deeper leagues. I wonder if they would even be considering this if they weren't decimated in the rotation. I would guess not.
Probably not, yeah.
But they are, and they're not getting any help anytime soon. So I think King has the potential to stay in the rotation for the rest of the season and potentially be a starter coming into next year and kind of being an under-the-radar guy.
And let's take that over to Ray with regards to next year. Do you think that a 29-year-old, which is what he'll be next year, Michael King, if this continues to go well and we're seeing, 80 to 90 pitch counts by the end of the year, does this roll over into next year, in your opinion, Ray, where King could be a starter for the Yankees? He'll be on the right side of 30, which is a rarity for that team. Is Michael King potentially changing his career here, or is this a short-term need because they don't have anybody type of situation?
I mean, I think the Yankees are probably doing this for both reasons, but I think they are certainly evaluating this September experiment with an eye on next year, right? I pulled up his, I wanted to pull up his pitch mix from these last, longer couple of starts and see if he was doing anything different. As you said, he has the arsenal to survive as a starter, Paul, but I wanted to see what he's doing. And he's gone kind of sinker heavy, it looks like, which I guess makes sense. He's featuring the sinker and the four-seamer and then, mixing in the slider and the changeup. So it actually looks like a pretty decent, a pretty reasonable starter arsenal in terms of how he's using it. For the short term, I think I would pump the brakes that he looks like he's been pounding the strike zone. He hasn't walked a guy in either of his 2 starts, and that probably isn't sustainable, both in terms of him not walking anybody, but also the impact on pitching deeper into the game in the next couple of weeks. If he keeps pounding the strike zone like that, he's probably going to get hit. But as far as next year goes, I'm interested. Obviously there are all sorts of questions about workload. Can he carry that workload even if he stayed healthy, how many innings would we be talking about next year? So
True.
those kind of things cap his value. But I guess the only other thing I'd throw on the pile is the Yankees have not traditionally been a team that's made a lot of use of the opener, but that would benefit him too. I'd rather see him pitching innings 2 through 6 rather than 1 through 5, and
especially now, right? Like as he's doing this down the stretch, give Michael King an opener, and then maybe next year he could be a traditional starter. But yes, that would just be so great. And I always reference this one because it is the gold standard. But that Ryan Yarbrough year when he got 16 wins, primarily as a follower. By the way, he's kind of regenerated some value out with the Dodgers for deeper leagues too. But yeah, I agree with you there on King. We got to kind of see where this workload goes. Cap it off with the Milwaukee start this week. Would you start Michael King in 15s there, Ray?
I would.
What about 12s? You guys getting into 12s there? Or is it too is he on the table, or is it just not even a consideration for Michael King in 12s?
Probably wouldn't be a consideration for me just because of where he's stretched out. I mean, you're probably looking at like 75, 80 pitches in this Milwaukee outing, which probably isn't enough to get me to pull the trigger there.
No, I think that's fair. Justin, let's stay with New York, but move over to, and actually I'm going to add a guy here too, because the other New York team had a young guy, and we'll talk about both of them here. But let's start with Jasson Dominguez, the Martian. I feel like despite the fact that he's 20, he's 20, there was already a level of prospect fatigue on him that his announcement to the majors was kind of underwhelming, and I can't believe it. Like, I guess I understand the path of how some of that fatigue happened, because he was anointed as the god of baseball when he was first signed, the Martian, he's going to be the greatest, and he just kind of meandered through the minors a little bit. Nothing was off the charts. We saw him at Fall League last year. Certainly didn't overly impress there statistically, but just kind of got the job done. And here he is at age 20 in the majors and making an early impact. Doesn't mean that he's going to, just be a god. But I feel like Jasson Dominguez's stock is set to rise. Of course, hitting a Sunday homer helped him for bids yesterday. And if he hits down the stretch here, he could be another one of these guys that really rises up the board. Where are you at right now on Jasson Dominguez, Justin? Were you in the bidding yesterday too?
I mean, I was technically in the bidding, but
in that you put a number next to him, but it was very low.
Yeah, I put a 1 next to him.
Okay,
because that's what I could afford.
Yeah.
Though I will say, in one of my OCs where I'm out of it and I kind of just didn't do any bids for, just because I'm like 40 points out of second place and top 2 get paid, and I was just like, you know what, screw it. I'm not even going to worry about that team. He didn't get picked up. Like, I could have gotten him for $1. So I mean, this is why you always continue to try
keep them honest.
Right, just because you never know what's going to happen. But I mean, in a few of my leagues, he went for 100 plus, which is just boggles the mind that people still have that kind of money. But I guess if you do, now's the time to spend it. 2 home runs already, making really, really good in zone contact thus far. You wonder how much of that is small sample goodness and how much of it is going to be sustainable. I still kind of stand by my analysis from Friday, which makes me think that maybe the power isn't going to be as prodigious as we've seen so far. But
nothing changed your opinion there on the weekend? 2 homers or not? I don't. That is curious that you would think that the power might not be. I understand. This year was like 160s ISO. I don't know, man. I think power could certainly. I think the fantasy categories are going to be there. I actually kind of maybe see him a little bit in somewhat of an Elly De La Cruz type of shape, at least statistically. Obviously, they are not built the same in any way, shape, or form. Jasson Dominguez is like 5'8", and Elly De La Cruz is like 6'90", and so they're different there. But power speed guys who might have some strikeout situation. Although I will say, Dominguez doesn't strike out to that same degree.
No, I mean, will he strike out at like a 28, 29% clip? Maybe, but like I don't think it's going to be 35 plus or something like that.
And it should be balanced by double-digit walks for Dominguez, which does help. So it's not a 1-to-1 comp there, but in terms of the power and speed being there right off the bat, I do think that that's going to be something that we should see, despite the 160s ISOs that we saw this year. I don't know. I don't want to overly influenced by 2 homers in 3 games. That's not going to move the needle for us. I was joking about saying that should have completely changed your outlook. That the one yesterday was a mammoth shot.
Yeah,
but,
it was.
You know, Nick Martini hit some mammoth shots this weekend too, and we're not talking him up. So like
Sunday night baseball, prime time. Like I was ready for the bids to go crazy. They did go crazy in a couple of my leagues.
Imagine that in June though. On a Sunday, like when everyone has the money, like they could only go so high yesterday, even with him hitting a Sunday night homer. But we always talk about the Sunday stats. The Sunday save is the killer when you're going for somebody. But yeah, I look in the main event, 63 was the high, and that's just a commentary on how poor the main event leagues are right now with Fab. He went as low, Jasson Dominguez did, as $3. And what a lucky person that person is. Pantalone, $3 with a $2 backup.
Went for $114 in my auction championship.
Somebody had some real cash there. That is nuts. But yeah, with Jasson Dominguez, obviously there's a lot to like with the upside here. Ray, I'm going to spin it forward again next year. If we see, like, let's just say just a nice solid showing here, right? Because if he goes crazy in September, we know that'll raise it. But let's say he ends up and it's like a 115, 120 WRC plus, little pop, little speed, solid helper down the stretch here for Jasson Dominguez. What kind of price do you think we might be looking at in those early drafts when we go to First Pitch Arizona? Because we do a bunch of drafts there. Will Jasson Dominguez be a buzzy player if he's just kind of good down the stretch, or does he have to go crazy to really be pushing up into, say, like single digit rounds or something silly like that?
Single digit rounds would get too expensive for me based on almost no matter what he does.
I agree.
September, but going back to your original point, Paul, I've got to agree with you. I can't ever remember a prospect who was has been around for so long, and yet when he arrives in the majors, somehow still feels rushed to me. I just didn't see this coming. It all started buzzing in the last week, and I mean, he's not lighting AA on fire. This is not a Vlad Guerrero burning down AAA and forcing his call-up situation, right? So clearly he's still got things to work on, and he's going to do it in the majors. But I guess the larger point I want to make, and I think this kind of influences my take on his price next year, is, are we sure the Yankees are good at developing prospects anymore? I mean, I think we got to ask some questions based
Absolutely
on
got to ask that.
how Volpe and the last crop of kids has come up, and they may no longer be on the list of organizations we give the benefit of the doubt that they know how best to handle the prospect. And you talk about the solid showing for Dominguez and what that does for his draft price. I'm gonna, despite the 2 home runs in 3 games, I'm gonna flip it on his head. What if they screw him up and he spends September striking out 40% of the time? What does that do to him?
Now, I think that would create a real buying opportunity for Jasson Dominguez, because I think it would kind of pull the rug out from under the hype train there, and then maybe it's somebody that we're buying on the cheap, unless you're concerned that would then lead to a beginning of the season in AAA type of thing. You mentioned like Volpe this year. In the end, the fantasy value is probably going to be there because of the homers and steals. So, those that got him are going to be able to kind of justify to themselves, well, I got 2020. Yeah, but you got 218 average. And so I don't know how much net value was there, especially if you drafted him at the very end when the price was really skyrocketing for Volpe. And I do think there is an open question about, how good to feel about when the Yankees call somebody up now, because we used to be pretty excited. And I think they botched, or I don't want to say they botched all these guys, but like, I had some excitement for a lot of guys, not just Volpe. I'm a Peraza fan. I'm an Oswaldo Cabrera fan. I really thought some of these young players could really help them be a competitive team this year, and we just haven't seen it. Now, is that just a confluence of Cabrera, Peraza, Volpe just not quite coming together? A bunch of rookies did come together across a bunch of other teams, or is there an organizational issue like Ray's suggesting? Justin, where do you come out on that? Are you still trusting? Like, where do you stand on the Yankees as prospect developers?
I mean, when was the last time they developed a hitting prospect?
Judge.
Yeah, I mean,
the best player in baseball.
And Judge took a really, really long time, right? Like, we waited forever for Judge, and this is why he hit free agency, later in his career than most people do. So, I mean,
he was drafted. Wait. Him taking a long time was because he was drafted at 22.
Well, but that also, I mean,
it took 3 years to get up. I mean, that's not crazy.
it's not crazy, but if a guy with his kind of pedigree, with his kind of talent, you would have thought would, when you drafted 22, you're not expecting him to be up at 25. You're hoping he's going to be up, 23, 24.
Here's a 32nd pick too, though.
That's fair.
I think that, but anyway,
but
your overall point makes sense.
You look past Judge, and they haven't developed guys and so I don't know if we should trust them. They tend to trade away these guys in order to bring in major league talent. That's how that's kind of how they operate. So it's nice to see them as an organization change and go, hey, we're not going to trade away some of these guys. We're going to, try to develop this talent and have these guys for long periods of time. So then we don't have to buy every player on the market or trade for every player on the market. But so far, the results look a little mixed. And I think it's too early to tell. I mean, Volpe, he's hit 208, but I think the underlying skills are going to be fine in the long run, especially for fantasy. So I'm definitely very interested to watch kind of what they do next or this offseason. Are they going to try to kind of continue to let these young guys play? Or are they going to just do what they've always done, which is bring in overpriced veterans to kind of take away spots? So because I'm really interested in Everson Pereira and Volpe.
I like him too.
And
I still like Oswaldo and Oswald. I still like both those guys, Cabrera and Peraza, respectively. So I'm with you there. Let's shift to the other New York team real quick. Talk about Ronnie Mauricio, Ray. He's a big time prospect as well. Another switch hitting guy. Has a lot of swing and miss, though. He might actually be a better comparison for somebody like Elly De La Cruz, at least in terms of the bat profile. I'm not sure, or at least in terms of the plate skills, I should say. The lack of walks and the big swing and miss, but the power and speed could be there too. He put up 23 homers, 24 steals at AAA. Didn't strike out as much there with an 18% K rate, but an 11% swinging strike rate and double-digit swinging strike rates all the way up does suggest that there's going to be some strikeouts at the major league level for Ronnie Mauricio. Ray, was he somebody you were in on the bids yesterday? And what is your expectation for him down the stretch here with the Mets?
I was in on him yesterday. For the short term, I'll chase opportunity and, that 23 home run, 24 stolen base line in the minors this year, as you say, combined with, starting to limit the strikeouts was enough to think that the, a long cup of coffee with the Mets here, long being 3+ weeks at this point, could move the needle in a couple of leagues. So I was in on him. Despite in addition to the swing and miss, though, looking at our scouting report at HQ that we posted up on this call up, the other thing that I think is a yellow to orange flag for the 2024 and beyond is. It's also got a high ground ball rate. His barrel rate is way down, mostly because when he hits the ball hard, he hits it on the ground. Shades of a young Vlad Guerrero, not in the good way, right? So that's something and that's probably just mechanism, just a reflection of the adjustments he's making. It's he's probably been focused on cutting down that strikeout rate, which has been successful, but he has not yet turned that into barrels. Instead, he's grounding out to short instead of striking out, which, better, sure, but, not yet where we want him to be.
That's another on Mauricio.
Another New York team that it'll be fascinating to see what they do in terms of sticking with their prospects next year, too. So,
absolutely.
He's going to be playing, Mauricio's going to be playing somewhere very soon, I'm sure, but it remains to be seen whether it's second base in Flushing.
Yeah, they're another team. Obviously, both New York teams got a lot of eyes on them. They always do, but this offseason, after the years that they've had, obviously nothing that they can do in September will change the fate, neither headed to the playoffs. Justin, with Ronnie Mo, let's spin it forward. Is he somebody that you like long-term? Again, power, speed, switch hitter, should have some PT if they don't block him with a bunch more veterans that like they brought in this past year. Do you think Ronnie Mauricio is somebody that could be a game changer next year?
I mean, I think that is in the realm of possibilities. I think he's also a guy who could spend the majority of the year in the minor leagues. So it's a very wide range of outcomes. And I think for me, it depends on what his price is. Like if he goes ham over the last month and people are like, hey, he's, a top 150 player next year, then I'm going to be out on that price. Like I just, I think the profile is too volatile for me to take that kind of gamble. But if he's more in the, 20s in terms of rounds in a 15-team league, I'm going to be much more interested in taking the gamble because he's really easy to drop if he doesn't succeed, and the upside is huge. So I think there are a lot of questions, like Ray mentioned, with the Mets organization. What are they going to do? Are they going to stick to this? Hey, we're going to kind of, rebuild for 2025 or 2026. And therefore, we're going to let the guys like Mauricio and Batty play. Or are they going to be like impatient? We've seen a lot of other very rich owners be and go, hey, you know what? We're gonna go all in again because I've got the money to do so. And block these guys off because Beatty should have been playing all year and been given a chance. He's dominated AAA multiple times now, and they have not been willing to kind of just let him play at the major league level. So
that's been frustrating.
Yeah, I drafted Beatty in my 3-sport league, so I'm taking a gamble that he's gonna be kind of the everyday third baseman. But Mauricio, I don't know. I think I do worry a little bit about the swing and miss. I think the point Ray brought up is that Mauricio's had a pretty large ground ball rates, which may be difficult to get power in Citi Field is a little bit discouraging because I don't know how legitimate the speed really is at the major league level too. So I think that I'm probably not going to have a lot of Mauricio next year for maybe in a couple draft champions leagues if he's really, really late.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I'm kind of unsure exactly how to feel about Ronnie Moe going forward as well. Interesting guy, but with the plate skills, I'm a little bit nervous about what his future outlook is going to look like. Let's jump back to the AL East, talk some Baltimore here. John Means to return after one more rehab start. What do we think here, Justin, with John Means? Can he be a fantasy contributor down the stretch?
I mean, maybe it's a really, really good park to pitch in. Kind of depends on, what his pitch counts look like in the minors. I mean, he threw 5 innings in his most recent rehab start. So it looks like the reins are going to come off a little bit. I don't like taking these guys though, coming off of Tommy John, especially in this.
Not when my season's on the line.
Yeah, it just feels super, super risky to me. So I probably won't, but I want, I was just talking about like having to decide between a middle reliever and Peter Lambert. So like, I can't completely brush off the chance.
Yeah, the idea that you would
in him, because I am scraping the bottom of the barrel, and I know a lot of people are in deeper leagues. So in deeper leagues, I guess you could take the gamble depending on the matchup and if he's pitching at home or not. But I think in most leagues, you should be leaving him on the waiver wire and kind of just watching and seeing how he looks potentially as a guy to pick up on next year.
That's where I'm at with John Means, and looking at their schedule down the stretch, not a ton going on with the schedule that looks all that soft. You got a St. Louis home series there, and again, I always worry about them, even though they've had a bad year, the offense can get you. Tampa Bay, Houston, Cleveland's not very, very good. There's a little 4-game set there, and then Washington, but then they close with Boston. So I'm not even sure there's going to be spots to start Means. Ray, are you similar to Justin and I, where you're not really looking at Means this year, but assessing him for next year? Or is he somebody that you're trying to snake and maybe get some starts out of down the stretch?
I mean, in 15s, I think I'd probably be interested in getting the starts from him down the stretch. Justin's first comment was about the ballpark, and it's hard to believe it's almost 2 years ago now when Means was like the original poster child. So for who was going to benefit from the fences getting pushed back, right? And that impact has been even bigger than we expected at Camden, and it's finally time for Means to benefit from it. But Paul, I'll take it back to your guy in Detroit. Like, can't Means come up for 4 starts and do what Tariq Skubal did and hit the ground running?
Sure.
Seems absolutely. Like a reasonable comp to me. And it looks like, he means to, I can't find the pitch counts either, but Justin mentioned that Means has gone 5 innings in his last start or two in the minors. That's a little more stretched out than Skubal was. Skubal's first couple of starts were like 60 pitches.
86 for Means on his last one here in a one.
Yeah, so that's great. If he's ready to go 90 3-4 times, I'm in for that. I guess the only thing I wonder about though is what are the Orioles' plans for him for October? Like he could, I could envision on that team that he would be best used in the playoffs as like a 3-inning once through the order.
That's exactly what I think he should be.
Which if they're going to do that and they're going to start training him for that role in October, now I'm out for this year.
Because I don't really want, I guess there's a world where 3 innings in the middle of some Baltimore games could be useful if you're like wins chasing. But yeah, I'm with you there. If they're not going to use him as a traditional starter, they have 6 guys right now even, and that's still without Tyler Wells, who looks like, talk about just evaporating after a pretty darn good year. They sent him to AAA or AA even, which I think was a proximity thing more than like a punishment or anything. But not coming back and not up for September. I don't know what the heck happened to Tyler Wells. He was such a useful player this year. 3.80 ERA is a little bit high because of his homers, but a 102 whip, one of the best in the league, 24% K rate. So yeah, I don't know what's going on there, but even without Wells,
he's injured.
Oh, he's injured now. Okay.
So he's been out since the end of August with arm fatigue. So I think there's something. Yeah, there's some arm issue going on right there for him.
It kind of made like the homers were starting to creep up, kind of like the Bailey Ober thing. In fact, I see those two very, very similarly, and they both got murked down the stretch there. But with Means, I love what you're talking about for them in the playoffs there. It's not fantasy related, but I think he'd be super valuable as a 3-inning guy, especially if they give like Kyle Gibson a start, get the righty in, then bring the lefty in, maybe 3 innings apiece, then turn it over to the bullpen could be super useful. But with Means stretched out, I will go a little bit closer to maybe using him than I was, but when I first started, I didn't realize he had 86 pitches. That is super stretched out, ready to go. And if they do start him traditionally, there's a world where I could get there. Again, if we're considering Peter Lambert's of the world, we got to consider some John Means of the world. Staying with Baltimore, Felix Bautista has elbow swelling and still needs some testing. Easy cut a long time ago. I don't think anybody should still have been holding him unless you have IL spots or whatever. I'm talking more NFBC on that one. But next year, Ray, I guess, it's a to be decided question. So it's a little unfair to pin this on you. But as it stands right now, are you drafting Felix Bautista? Let's say I put you in a draft right now. Would you take the discount on Bautista? I don't know what that discount is, but there's certainly going to be one because otherwise he'd be going in like the 2nd or 3rd round, which he did in the draft we're about to talk about. Let's say he's going 7th, 8th round in a 15-teamer for Bautista based on this injury. Would that be enough of a discount for you, Ray?
Oh, heck no. I will be out from, I think basically nothing can happen in terms of good news for Bautista that would move the needle for me until we get to next March. And on the first day of spring training, we see he's on a normal throwing program. And even then, I'm probably going to be worried. But, any draft champions this winter or anything like that, any discount that, even beyond the single-digit rounds, I'm out. This just screams to me that, it's Tommy John, and the only question is when.
It's pretty scary, and I love Felix Bautista. So excited about him ascending to the top of the RP rankings, and yet here we are in a pretty bad state. Justin, do you see it similarly to Ray, where Bautista is just, it's a matter of when, not if, with regards to TJ, and thus you're not going for him?
Yeah, it feels like that. It's interesting that they're saying, oh, we still have more tests to do, that there's still swelling. This feels like they're just trying to maybe put off the inevitable just in case he could potentially pitch through into the playoffs, but feels super, super unlikely.
Yeah, but this is you always look at the calendar with Tommy John, and there's no reason for them to rush the decision because there's no way he's pitching next year anyway if he has it. So taking a month now to do it does not impact his 2025 return. So they can soft pedal this. To to turn your question around, though, Paul, give me all the Eddie or Cano at any discount I can take.
Absolutely, because I really, really believe in what Cano's doing, and I actually think there's some more swing and miss in his game there. We haven't seen major strikeouts from him. We've seen some great command and some ability to really succeed here. He's amazing turnaround. He was who they got for Jorge Lopez, who, by the way, is now full circle back with Baltimore. He was waived by Miami. They scooped him back up. So not only do they get Yennier Cano, as well as Cade Povich, and I think 2 other players from that deal. Now they have Lopez back in tow, too. So the Orioles just winning that deal over and over and over again. But yeah, I like Cano. I do believe in him. Yeah, he's a 29-year-old breakout. In relief, that doesn't really bother me as much, like a late career breakout, because things can change on a dime for relievers all the time. So I'm not too worried about him kind of being out of nowhere, Yennier Cano. All right, let's get into the draft. The Pull Hitter podcast. First off, the Pull Hitter podcast and Patreon, Rob DiPietro. You got to be checking that out. He does an amazing job, brings on great guests, wonderful conversations on the podcast. The Discord is a lot of fun. I know, Justin, we're both in there. The Patreon has all sorts of great information. Pull Hitter podcast, Rob DiPietro. Check that out. He ran a 15-team 7-round draft a couple weeks ago now. This already has a little age to it, and I don't say that to roast them, more to bring up they really went in. You know, you're talking about a mid-August 7-round draft here. I used to do like early ones, like the day the season ended, and I'm like, oh, that's early. Now they're doing it with 6 weeks left in the season, and it creates some really interesting stuff here. And these sorts of drafts, even though this is not going to be like on the site, it's only 7 rounds. There can be a bit of an anchoring effect here, right? And we see that a lot with the early drafts. I think the Arizona Fall League drafts can have some anchoring effect on some ADPs, because actually those can go into the overall ADP of NFBC with the draft champions. So let's talk about this draft. Let's start at the top here. First round, couple pitchers going, Justin. Strider and Cole, 3 and 12 respectively. I don't think that the 2 guys are wrong. I think those are the right guys. Strider and Cole are my 1-2 as well. Do you like those picks there at 3? I think that's probably Jenny Butler, if I had to guess.
It is.
And then I think Stephen Mager.
Michael Mager.
Michael, excuse me. Yes. You like those 2? Strider and Cole as the 2 first-round guys? Do you have anybody else there as a first-round starter?
I think those are the 2 right guys. I would potentially even maybe put Luis Castillo kind of in the back end of that first round. But I think one of the things, I can't remember if you and I were talking about it on air, off air, is, you know, I think a lot of it just depends on where you think that first real drop off in talent is. Like, is it in the middle of the second round? Is it at the beginning of the second round? Because I think you're going to get 2 elite players if you're at the back end of the draft. And if you want to add in more pitchers to that, you can kind of start pushing back where you can get those elite players. So I don't have a problem at all with Strider going 3rd, with Cole going 3rd either, even though Cole went 12th in this draft. So it's just interesting to me. Last year when we were at First Pitch Arizona, and you and I were in that draft at Hold, which I'm winning, by the way. I started that draft off at the 15 spot and took Burnes and Cole. And so the only reason we had a first round pitcher in that draft is because I pulled the trigger at 15. So to see Strider already at
criminal
3,
that you took the 15 spot from me, by the way, criminal.
No, that is the strategy. I appreciate the new guys at First Pitch Arizona not realizing the strategy is you want the later pick. So that way, because the First Pitch Arizona drafts, we do the first 23 rounds and then we take a pause and we don't finish the last.
I should have put a patent on that.
Yeah, we don't finish those last 27
my gambit
rounds
for years.
January. So getting that last pick means I get the first pick in January. So
when so much dust has settled, it's a big advantage. So by the way,
sure
you
I got
took
Carlos Estevez.
You took actually.
It's probably someone bad, isn't it?
You blew it this year. You took Will Myers, which I would have done too. So
yeah.
I can't even roast you. I took Carlos Estevez 4 picks later. But yeah, and then you took Spencer Steer in the 25th. So, I mean, if you just flip those, you're good. But anyway, continue. Sorry.
So it's interesting to me to see, usually we don't see a ton of pitching early on in these really early drafting homes. And then the pitchers start to creep up as we get, start getting through spring training.
But those are the 2.
Yeah,
So
those are the
I
guys.
think it makes sense with Strider and Cole being the top two guys. I think they need to be. I think they are a cut above. I do think if you miss there, though, I don't know that you have to rush because I do love Castillo. He's my number 3. He's my number 3 ranked right now. He'll be my number 3 going into next year, barring anything crazy down the stretch. He's my AL Cy Young pick. There's a good chance of that coming through. Really love him. Gosman goes in the next round. But then you're talking Burnes, Wheeler, Gallen in the third. I'm fine, quote unquote, getting stuck with one of those guys. I'm even fine looking at the other 2 Milwaukee guys, Peralta and Woodruff, there in the fourth with Tyler Glass. Now he's always a risk with that health. Sandy Alcantara, Yuri Perez, interestingly, in the fourth there to Bubba. He went old and young there. He went Yuri Perez, Max Scherzer back-to-back combo. So it'll be interesting to see how the starting pitchers play out. We know as it gets closer and gets into March with the main event, more will push up. But I do wonder if anybody else is going to get into that first round. I think that's really the interesting part there. Ray, where are you on first round starters? Strider and Cole, the guys, anybody else creeping there for you? Or do you even take either of those 2 out of your first round right now?
Oh, no, I've got those 2 in the first round. They stay there in my book. If anything, I think Cole went too late here. I think Cole belongs in the first half of the first round at least. To me, he's still, Strider's unbelievable, but Cole's, track record of consistency is just unmatched at this point. As far as the next tier, it's really interesting how many, just getting through it in rounds 3, 4, 5, there's a lot of guys with, question marks of different varieties, whether it be the health issues either this year or, ongoing guys like Woodruff and Glass now, or, Justin mentioned the kids like, Yuri Perez mixed in here, and Scherzer and Verlander are still hanging around. Grayson Rodriguez is in this tier 2. Then there's the aggravating Aaron Nola down in round 5 really jumps out at me too. I think that's probably the right place, but he's one that I wonder if we get a better explanation or better analysis in the offseason of what went wrong this year, if that bounces a little bit. Max Fried is down there too, and if he ends the season strong and healthy, that looks a little undervalued going, he had been so consistent before this year. There are a lot of landing spots for pitchers in especially round 4 to 7 here, which I think, to your point, Paul, gives you a lot of flexibility in how you do your build.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you can go a lot of different ways with things. I do want to talk, I mentioned how just in the course of since this draft was posted on August 23rd, things would be a lot different if you ran it back. And I don't think there'd be anybody more different than this guy. Trea Turner was at 16. So at the turn to our good friend Ryan Bloomfield from Baseball HQ, took him there with Judge. What a killer 1-2 punch, by the way. Not getting that very often there at 15, 16, because Trea, he's fully back. 6 homers and 16 ribbies just since then. Just in 9 games since this draft. Justin, where would Trea Turner go now in a rerun of this?
Probably in the middle of the first round.
Yeah, single digits for sure.
I think, and this is going to be, a common thing I think that we say is like, I don't want an early pick next year. Like, I think, I want to be somewhere between like 8 and 15 because you're going to get a Trea Turner or a Jose Ramirez or a Corbin Carroll or a Garrett Cole. Like, you're going to get like a really elite talent and then have an earlier second round pick. So, if I'm sitting there at 8 and Trea Turner is still on the board, I'm probably going to smash that draft button pretty quickly. So, but yeah, I just think it's going to be a great year to sit in the middle, and I don't have any concerns with Turner. Like I said, he's been amazing over the last few weeks to kind of recoup some of that value you took. You missed out on taking him in the top 3 overall picks this year, but I think he's going to be fine for next year, and it wouldn't surprise me if we see him go in the top 5 of some drafts, because some people are just going to be like, hey, he has been a top 5 player pretty much every season for years now. Why wouldn't we think he's going to get right back to that with a strong finish to 2023?
I was hoping to get the discount on Trea. I'm like, I was fine with this mediocre
should have been drafting in August.
I know. First year on a new deal. Go ahead, Ray.
Sorry, less about Trea and more about the caliber of player. Let me run by you guys my sort of early theory about the macro draft board for this year. All right. Turner has been a top 5 pick and we know the other guys who've been up there because we've been so fixated on speed coming into the drafts the last few years. We don't have to be fixated on speed anymore. So Turner maybe should be a little bit devalued because of that, because you can find stolen bases anywhere. Now his broad, he's maybe not the best talking point for it because his broad skills, and 5 category talent still belong up there early in the first round. But I'm looking at 3 picks later in this draft from Turner to Corey Seager, and somebody who I think because of that lack of speed has been devalued in the market for the last few
Keep him
years.
devalued. Keep him.
But like I would slam Corey Seager in the second round now, because used to be if you did that, now you're terrified of where you're going to find your stolen bases, especially with one less middle infield spot to put them in. Now I don't care anymore. I can find stolen bases anywhere. Give me all the Corey Seager.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I couldn't get enough of him this year. Obviously, that's panned out. I'm not going anywhere. I know Justin has his concerns with Seager, and they're health related. I get it.
He's
but
carrying me in my auction championship this year. So
because he's amazing.
Well, and because I got him at a good price, because a lot of people, like Ray was saying, just devalued him because he doesn't steal at all. And I was like, well, I'll take him if he's, $5-6 under what I think his price should be. And he's been fantastic. I do worry about the health. And I'm always going to worry about the health because, the health concerns on him have been there since kind of the beginning of his career.
He got hurt this year too. Let's just be fair.
He definitely missed time, but he's been amazing when he's been in there. And so, I mean, second round, I think that might be a little bit scary for me to pull the trigger on a guy who I'm not 100% sold that, can stay healthy, but I mean, he's worth that pick. If you are not as petrified about the health as I always seem to be with Corey Seager, then
who you taking in that second round that has any sort of stability though? I think maybe Alonso. Everyone else in there has some major concerns health-wise recently, or just skill-wise. Like Elly was in the second, so we're seeing what's happening with him as he comes back to earth. Bichette, Seager, Matteo, basically the first baseman, Matteo or Alonso are probably your more stable guys there. Harper obviously kind of got his power going. Austin Riley went in the third. You could bump him in the second. I don't have an issue with that. So yeah, but with Seager, I get it, because again, he missed time this year, but he's so amazing. Otherwise, that he's just kind of steamrolled through that. And we knew the average was going to come up. I know he was a big target for the shift thing. It's like, as Jeff pointed out, Jeff Zimmerman didn't even need the shift thing. That was all. He was always going to be a big batting average raiser this year, regardless of what changes they were going to make when he hit like 245 last year. Corey Seager is an absolute stud. Ray, let's start with you on this one. Ozzie Albies and Yordan Alvrez in the first round at 14 and 13 respectively. I said that in the wrong order. Sorry. Alvrez 13, Albies 14. Do they belong in the first round, Ray?
I don't have a problem with Alvarez at all. I might have a little problem with Albies, and you hit some of the names earlier from the second round. To me, Olsen and Alonso kind of fit into the same thing I was talking about earlier about how much easier it is to get speed and how that moves the values around. Give me the completely stable 40 home runs from Alonso and Olsen late in the first round in that spot, and I'll worry about speed on a couple of future turns. But to me, I would rather have Alonso or Olsen as my building block than Albies there. But Yordan, given where he was at the start of the year and the injury, and I don't think we're concerned about that going forward. I'll throw him in that bucket too. But the 41-110 guy is a perfectly reasonable first rounder in this new stolen base cornucopia environment here.
Yeah, I love your point there with it was going back to the Trea situation about like now that we don't need to be as speed focused and kind of held hostage by some of those guys that run, we don't necessarily have to overvalue that. Now, one of the things though, when you see SBs go up, you do need more to compete.
For sure.
You don't want to forget them, but there are more avenues to get them later in the draft. So I still don't think you need them in the first round. Remember, there was all that chatter about like, if you're not getting speed in the first round, your first round pick sucks or something. It wasn't that simple, but it was this thing of like, some of these guys can't go in the first because they don't run. And it's like, No, there's other rounds to get speed. But I do think, you don't want to go too many rounds without some real speed there. But Albies only 11, right? He has not been a major runner, but 28 homers, 90 ribs, 76 runs, and a 260 average. We're very pro Albies on this show. Justin, do Alvarez and Albies belong in the first round?
I'm going to take the opposite take of Ray. I think Albies belongs in that discussion of a first rounder. And I don't think Yordan really does. And it has everything to do with his health. Like, we're talking about a guy who's only played 90 games this season, and that's, 40 to 45 below other elite talents at this point. And he's never hit 40 home runs because he can't stay on the field. And there's always seemingly something going on with Yordan Alvarez. So you add in the fact that he, again, doesn't run. Well, I don't think you need to prioritize speed in the first round. I want to get speed in the first round. I want to get some speed just because I don't want to be beholden to some sort of rabbit later on that can get hurt or lose playing time. And then all of a sudden I'm devoid of speed. So for that reason, once again, this year, I'm probably going to be out, or once again next year, because this year I was already out on Yordan Alvarez. I'm probably going to be out again. I know the talent's elite, and we could see a Judge season, where he pops off for 55, 60 home runs at some point if he stays healthy. But I'm not going to bet on the health until we see it. And we
not in the first, right?
Well,
go ahead, Ray.
Let's argue about this. Everything you just said about Alvarez applies to Judge too. Why is Judge still in the first round then?
I don't think Judge should go in the first round.
I'm not particularly keen on taking Judge in the first either. Yeah, for the same sort of considerations there.
Yeah.
And I'm usually the guy arguing to take injury risk guys if everything's in place. Like if they're elite talents, first round's a little tougher for that. I can make those arguments more in the third to seventh round area where you're taking guys maybe a round or two higher than they should be. Give me that third round guy like Seager this year in the third, fourth, when maybe his consistent health issues maybe said he was a fifth, sixth, seventh. I don't know that I can push a guy up into the first like Alvarez or Judge and feel that comfortable when there's so many other options too. Like I would rather take Turner coming off of his issues there. I would maybe rather go with a pitcher. I might just go with one of the boring, steady first basemen like Olsen or Alonso too. Yeah, I don't get the speed, but I take one of those. They can get me the 50 homers that we're talking about with Alvarez and Judge, maybe with a lower batting average, almost certainly, but less of a health concern too.
Give me 150 games like that. I want 100. I want 150 games out of my first round.
As best as you can guarantee that, right? It's always hard, and anybody can get hurt, but there is no better indicator of future health issues than previous ones, and Alvarez and Judge have those in abundance. I already talked. Oh, sorry. You know what? I should have read ahead there, Justin. I'm sorry. I added the Trea Turner thing because I didn't see Trea Turner on the board, and there you have him right there with Bloomfield taking Judge and Turner. So I should have just trusted you. I'm sorry about that. But we already talked Trea, so let's move on to the next topic here. Elly De La Cruz in the second round. I've already alluded to him a little bit. We talked about him with regards to Jasson Dominguez and some Ronnie Moe earlier. Second round, Justin. Again, we're talking. This draft was posted on August 23rd. Let me get you his numbers since then because I want to know what sort of changes would happen to his draft stock now because it's only been 9 games, but I bet they've been pretty rough. Since then, and hang on, 156, 208, 222 with 22 strikeouts in 11 games. That's 22 strikeouts in 49 plate appearances for Elly De La Cruz. He's down to a 723 OPS, sub 300 OBP, still 11 homers and 24 steals. I'm not here to say that he's bad, but remember a couple weeks ago we did an episode, is Elly going to go in the first round? No. Should he even go in the second, Justin?
Should he? Probably not. Will he? Definitely. He definitely will be a second round pick.
You think so?
Yeah, I think so.
Like ADP by ADP, it'll be there. Okay.
There's gonna be someone in every league that pushes him up into the second round, and he will have plenty of drafts where he's a first rounder. People are just gonna chase that upside, which I completely understand. Am I going to? Probably not. I can see the argument for it, but a 35+% strikeout rate is just frightening to me. And while he is electric and a fun guy to watch, it just I don't want that kind of volatility on my roster, especially not in the first round. If he was a fourth rounder or even a third rounder, I'd be probably jumping for joy. But a first or a second rounder, I just think is going to be too rich. And I do think he's going to end up, even with struggles, and even if there isn't like a huge turnaround for the last month of the season, I still think people are going to want to push him up there. 24 stolen bases already is insane.
Yeah, I mean, that part is crazy with Elly De La Cruz. There is so much fantasy goodness, but you are taking a major batting average risk. Ray, if you take Elly De La Cruz, do you have to kind of pattern the rest of your draft? Let's say you take him in the second. Do you have to be batting average focused with, the next 3-4 pieces of your foundation to cover him? Or are you just kind of letting the chips fall where they go and hope you spike like a 250, 260 out of Elly?
I think you do have to be pretty batting average focused. And I think in general, extending off of the earlier point about speed being more available and power, obviously is always available. I think being laser focused on batting average in your build is going to be kind of a secret sauce this year. As far as Elly himself, I said this to Patrick Davitt a couple of weeks ago on HQ Radio, even before I saw this board. But my favorite pick in this draft is C.J. Abrams in the middle of round 5. Give me C.J. Abrams before
You're
Elly
speaking
every
Justin's
day.
language. You're speaking Justin's language. That's one of his big dudes. And now here he is in the 5th round of this, which that on its
That's
own.
a gift.
Yeah, but that on its own, bit of a surprise because of how much he's surged up this year. And I think it's being a little bit undercovered because he's on Washington. I think people maybe aren't realizing if you don't have C.J. Abrams on your team, or maybe your opponent that you're chasing the most doesn't have him, so that you're laser focused, you might have missed that C.J. Abrams has 15 homers and 38 steals with a 245 average. He's basically doing what Elly's doing. Now, granted, bigger sample to get to those similar numbers, but the slash line's pretty similar. So why would I pay the Elly price when Abrams is there? I think that's Ray's point, and that makes a lot of sense to me. Justin, I know you agree, but do you want to talk about Abrams a bit in the 5th round there? Does he continue to surge? Is he going to go higher here? If another 3 weeks, let's just say another 3 weeks of quality, not tearing the world up. Let's just say he basically kind of keeps this pace going, finishes the season strong. Is C.J. Abrams higher than a 5th rounder, or does he kind of live around that range as a somewhat bargain, at least according to Ray, myself, and you?
Yeah, I don't want to call him a bargain quite yet. I've got to do my projections and run the numbers, and hopefully I'll have that done by first pitch. So that way I can, if I do decide to jump back in the draft to defend my title,
when you are in the draft,
knock on wood that Lucas Buehler doesn't catch me, because he was dominating most of the year before I passed him. I do wonder, like, if he's gonna be one of these guys that are overdrafted. Like the core underlying skills are still a little bit scary because he doesn't walk at all, and so he swings a ton, and so you do wonder about volatility in the profile.
Can Abrams even drink legally yet, though?
I don't know.
I'm barely kidding on that. He's 22.
Yeah.
But my point there is, like, could there be some growth? Like, I don't think he's going to ever become a 10% walk rate guy or anything like that, right? But I wonder.
I don't think
if
you
there
want
might
him
even
to.
be
Like, his aggressive approach
Yep.
is what has allowed him to get these home runs that we didn't necessarily think were in the profile. So, like, if he became more patient, he's probably hitting, closer to, single digit home runs as with the speed, as opposed to the double digit home runs. So, I don't think you necessarily want him to change the approach too much, but I think it will lead to volatility, especially as pitchers start to kind of read the scouting report a little bit on him and attack him maybe a little bit differently. So that being said, like, 5th round feels like a pretty good spot for a guy like Abrams, who could potentially be like a 15-50 guy next season. And you got to think that Washington can't get much worse. If that means they should be able to get better around him
for their sake, I hope.
Yeah. With a more team context, for sure. I mean, don't forget that Abrams was the bottom of the lineup the first half of the year.
Exactly.
And they bumped him up. That's helping him there. And, there is growth there. And I think the kind of growth that we want, I think you're right, Justin. He's never going to be a 10% walk guy, but he has gone from 3% to 5% in the second half, which is not nothing. And
I would take like 7.
Yeah, and
like
more
7%.
The contact has gone from 75 to 83%. If he's a slap hitter, put the ball, not strike out, use the leg, beat out the ground balls. I mean, it's a Jose Reyes starter kit, right?
That's a great throwback name
That's
there
a
in terms of
great
what
comp,
CJ
yeah.
Abrams can be, because he does give you a little bit of that sneaky pop. He isn't just pure rabbit.
Yeah.
And I do think there's a world where the BABIP's going to cooperate, and that can be very soon. And all of a sudden he's hitting 285, on a high end there for CJ Abrams. Because, I mean, you're talking 281 BABIP this year, 291 last year. As he fills out a little bit more, he's very wiry, puts a little bit more punch on the ball on those grounders. Those are getting through the infield more. Batting average, base hits going up. Stolen bases going up. He's the 74th player overall this year on the player rater, on the Razzball player rater. Went 68th in this draft, so not too far off of what he's already performing. If we think he can be even a bit better next year, even if it's similar core skills, the plate skills, the OBP, and all that, but the volume's going up because he's batting at the top of the order all year, then I do think 68th pick is not too bad at all for CJ Abrams. Let's talk Corbin Burnes. I briefly mentioned him when we were talking about the starters. He goes in the third round. Remember all the hand-wringing early on about him? It was really 2 starts. That's the funniest thing. I was looking back at this the other day. It's like, man, remember when we were like really, really worried about Burnes? Push come to shove, it was 2 bad outings. It was 10 earned in his first 9 1/3, and it's like, uh-oh. And listen, he hasn't essentially been like a god from that point forward, but in the 25 starts since for Burnes, it's a 3.18 ERA, which you have zero complaints about. Like, there's no way that you can really complain too much about that, with a 105 whip and 161 Ks in 155 2/3 for Burnes. Justin, is the third round a bargain for Corbin Burnes?
I think it is. I mean, I think he deserves to be in that conversation for the 3rd overall pitcher with Gallen and Luis Castillo next year, and maybe even like a Kevin Gausman or someone like that. Which means to me, like, this guy should be going towards the top end of the second round. So I was a little surprised that he went in the 3rd round. Maybe there's going to be some conversations. Well, no, I guess he's not a free. No, he's still ARB eligible one more season. So
I take Burnes over Gausman, to be honest.
I would too, and I think the question really becomes: would you rather have Burnes or Gallen next year, or Burnes and Castillo? I think I lean Castillo, and then
Burnes for me. I think.
It's really tough. I love Gallen. Gallen is my NL.
He's great.
He's been a little rougher as of late.
He
so maybe
angered some folks this past week. Yes, it was a tough 2-step.
Yeah, maybe I tend to lean Burnes just because I got burnt this week pretty hard by him. So, but I mean, that being said, Gallen's been amazing over the course of the season.
And Dodgers Orioles, you have a hard time writing up a tougher 2-step there, and he gave up 11 earned in 10 2/3 this week for Gallen, which stings down the stretch from your ace, but he's still been wonderful for folks all year. So yeah, I mean, with Burnes, with the Milwaukee trio in general, I think they all present some interesting value. Woodruff and Peralta going in the 4th there. I'm always a big B Woody guy. I know he had the injury this year that kept him out for a bit, and Peralta doing pretty well. But Ray, with Burnes in the 3rd round, do you feel that's a good price, like Justin and I? And how do you feel about his two teammates there, Woodruff and Peralta? Are you in on the Milwaukee trio?
I'll pump the brakes on Burnes relative to the 2 of you guys. I mean, he's still off mile per hour from last year, and that's another 1.5 miles total from 2021. The swing strike rate's down on the year. The walk rate's up. Overall, and he's pitched to, the results since those first 2 starts have been pretty much in line. But you can pull your own ERA estimator, but our expected ERA is a full run higher than last year. It's at 3.85 now. I'm not, I'm not out on him. I think he belongs in that round 3, 4, 5 pile, but I think there's good reason why he's not the clear SP3 right now. Of the 3 Brewer guys, I think I probably like Woodruff the most for next year at this early stage. I love Peralta, but I think we just have to establish that, he is not consistent enough. He's not the workhorse that the other 2 are. He can look great for, 130 innings at a time and then give you 50 clunkers to go with it. So I would probably go Woodruff, then Burnes, then Peralta in terms of my rankings for next year. But, It's early. We haven't written the forecast yet, right, Paul?
Exactly. And I can't wait to get it going. Can't wait to see what picture pages I get this year. I love writing all of it. The hitter's actually the bigger challenge for me because I am so in on pitchers that those, deep diving hitters. Yeah, the Baseball HQ forecaster writing process is one of my favorite things every year, working with Brent. And fitting all that information into those capsules is very difficult and a lot of fun to go through. Going to be eager to see how all three Milwaukee starters are written up. Love all three of them, and we're eager to see what they can do in the playoffs too, because I think they're kind of a sleeping giant. When you have three aces and an ace reliever in Devin Williams and some big time hitters, their lineup is not awesome, but in a playoff situation, take a couple guys, a random Mark Canha gets going type of deal. I can see the Brewers making some noise there, but we're not here to talk playoffs. We're talking 7-round draft from the Pull Hitter podcast. Great work here by these 15 folks. 10 closers in the first 4 rounds, 15 in the 7 altogether. Justin, we talked about it all year. Saves have not really been available. The best guy has definitely been Adbert Alzolay as far as waiver pickup, and he went in these 7 rounds. So he's already been anointed into the top 15, but there just hasn't been that much. That doesn't mean there hasn't been turnover. It's just that when there's been turnover, it's been spread out to 3 guys. If there was a 1 guy who went down, they said, you, and you can now get saves. We just haven't seen as many baton passes to a solo guy. In fact, it took a lot of time for the baton to even get passed to Alzolay. Think of all the Fulmer bids that we had. I can't remember the other jokers that we were betting on in Chicago, but there's multiple other guys there before Alzolay, and now here he is looking like an absolute beast. But what was your take generally on the closers in this 7-round draft, Justin?
You're going to need to get them early. You're going to need to pay for saves.
Even earlier, because it was early last year too.
Yeah, you're going to, and even with Felix Bautista, who's the first closer off the board, probably not going to be there. Like, Cano is just going to take his spot maybe a round or 2 later. So
he would be in the 7 rounds if we did this again. Yeah. Cano would take his spot. Yeah. Not the direct spot that he took, which was 2nd round for Bautista, but he would be in the 7.
My guess, he'd be probably after Alzolay.
That's where I would be. Just eyeballing it. Yeah.
So like if you want saves, and like there's always gonna be the people that are like, don't pay for saves, that the old Matthew Berry trope.
If they want to play that game, I think even Matthew would say it's a different landscape than when he was saying don't pay for saves.
And those are 10-team leagues, right? And 10-team leagues, you can afford to wait a little bit longer because you'll pick up guys off of the waiver wire that are valuable, like the Carlos Estevez's of the world this year. So, but I think in the majority of kind of 12 and 15 team leagues, like you need to pay for saves. Like you are just going to be left behind. And if you paid for saves this year, you were doing fantastic. If you ended up with a Felix Bautista or a David Bednar.
Not everybody though. If you paid for Helsley, there were some misses there too. We have to acknowledge there's always going to be some misses. But generally speaking, if you paid for saves, especially if you bought 2, it's very hard. I can't even think of, were there 2 busts that you could have combined? Like who could you have paired with Helsley? That would have been Of course, you could have gotten unlucky there. If you went Diaz Helsley, you were thinking, I've got 80 saves and like 200 strikeouts, and then poof. So it can still happen, right? It's not foolproof, but we do.
Is that different than the starting pitcher market? I mean,
no,
it's the same,
absolutely
it's the same
not.
risk, right?
Exactly.
I mean,
exactly.
If you look at the rest of this board, other than the grenades, other than Diaz and Helsley, the guys who were on the 7-round board are the guys who were on the 7-round board last year in most
bingo.
Cases. It's Class, Class A, it's Hader, it's Romano, it's and then a couple of guys
Kenley
who have that kind of stuff. Kenley for sure.
Kenley's still sticking around.
Duvall's still here. He was a rival,
Yep.
Who started slow and eventually got back to being his old self. I mean, I think the track record of these guys, we talk about closers being burn bright and burn out early, but these guys are on this part of the board for a reason because they provide that.
Absolutely. And again, I'm going to continue to pay for saves. It's a market I don't like to play in during the season. In fact, one thing I've actually said as far as, with my work of being in the fantasy industry, I've been a little light on the closer market in terms of knowing who's around because I have not been in it. Like, so even though it's been light this year, I do know that with Hader and Evan Phillips, and even Evan Phillips hasn't been just a lock solid, perfect number two, but it's been enough to where I haven't even had to worry. So I don't even always know what's going on in the closer market every week anyway, but because I've just been locked and loaded with those two. And Phillips didn't even go here. By the way, I think next year is the year for Brusdar Gratterall. I'm calling that now. They've been grooming him for a few years into that role. I think they finally give him the full-blown role next year, and Brusdar Gratterall has a big breakout closer year. That's my little call here. Ray, let's start with you on this one. No catchers until the 5th round, and then Francisco Alvarez was the was the 4th. He went in the 6th round there after Real Muto, Smith, and Rutschman. Those were the top 3, and then Alvrez 4. Let me start with the Alvarez point first. Would he go there if we did this again today? Because he's another guy that, despite it only being 9-10 games since this draft was posted, he's in a real downturn right now. Do you think that another 10 games of poor quality from Alvarez would push him out of the 7 rounds, or do you think people are still pretty interested in him? In 9 games is not going to move that needle.
I mean, it's not 9 games, right? He hasn't homered in a month.
That's true. That's true. It's just in 9 more. So he was in that skid during the draft, so maybe 9 more wouldn't affect it because they liked him enough to take him there anyway. But how do you feel seeing a homerless month from Alvarez? Would you take him in a top 7 round situation?
I mean, on the one hand, he's probably just worn out, and I think I'd be willing to give him a little bit of a mulligan for that. On the other hand, even in the first half, he hit 214. So, there's a tax there. I can't draft,
Why not just draft Shea Langoliers?
Yeah, I can't draft like Alvarez 14 batting average in the top 10 rounds.
I'm with you there.
My other point about catchers in general, jumping back to the 3, the round before him.
The big dogs, Real Muto, Smith, and Rutschman were the 3 in the 5th round. Go ahead.
Yeah, for those 3 guys, and it's also a distinction from Alvarez, I think, although we'll learn about it going forward. If I'm going to pay for a catcher this early, it's got to be one who gets the DH at bats, who doesn't just play 5 days a week, and that actually does kind of disqualify Smith. We'll see what the Dodgers do with their roster next year. Whether JD Martinez is back or if they bring in somebody else in that role at DH and lengthen their lineup. But that to me puts Real Muto and Rutschman as the clear 1-2 on my catcher board. Could Alvarez get used that way? Probably. I would actually argue he probably should be used that way.
He should almost have more DH than catching, right? Yeah.
He's the old Carlos Delgado, the one that you want him to catch twice a week just to stay eligible, but spend most of his time DHing. Whether the Mets figure that out is an open question. But my catcher board, like I said, would be Real Muto and Rutschman 1-2, and we'll figure it out after that.
Yeah, I would flip them, but I agree. Rutschman, Real Muto for me. I'm very big on Rutschman, and you point out something really strong there with regards to the supplemental DH plate appearances, which hurt Smith this year, which people kind of were in on. They're saying, okay, they got JD now, the moves they've made, he might lose some of those. And then Sean Murphy had a bunch of those with Oakland, and we knew that he probably wasn't going to get those this year, and that's proven to be true as well. Justin, with the catchers going here, and again, Murphy did go too. So it was those 5: Real Muto, Smith, Rutschman, Alvarez, Murphy. Those were the only 5 catchers to go. Do you have a distinction there with Smith being out of the top 3 for that same reason that Ray said? And then how do you feel about the Alvarez situation? And would you take him anywhere near the top 7 rounds?
Yeah, I think Ray nailed it. I want guys who are going to get those extra plate appearances if I'm going to take them highly. But we've also had this just really interesting catching crop this year of guys who've kind of literally came out of nowhere. I didn't know who Yarnier Diaz was coming into this, coming into the preseason, and he's been a really, really nice catcher. But yeah, if I'm going to take a catcher early, I wanted to be a guy who's going to get those DH appearances. I was just a little surprised to see Real Muto, who was a 2nd, 3rd round pick, go as late as he did in this. I feel like he might even be a little bit undervalued considering what he's kind of done in the past as well as what he's done this year. Rutschman, I agree. I think he's my number 2 guy. And I probably am going to be out on Will Smith because, like I said all along, I think the Dodgers end up with Ohtani, and then
there goes your DH.
Yeah,
for sure.
There goes all of your DH spots if Ohtani's hitting there. So
yeah, I think that makes a
yeah.
lot of sense too. By the way, it's kind of the obvious answer that people have been saying that the Dodgers are going to get Ohtani. Just because it's obvious doesn't mean it's wrong. I tend to think that that's going to be happening as well. So yeah, we're in lockstep there on the catchers. And again, like I wasn't kidding that much when I said why not just take Shea Langoliers instead of Francisco Alvarez, given the price difference. Do I think Alvarez is better than Langoliers? Yes. But 206 and 16 homers versus 211 and 21 homers.
Give me Cal Raleigh. Like, I mean,
Well, Cal Raleigh for sure, but I'm talking
Yeah.
like Langoliers is 10 rounds after Raleigh even. Like we're talking, and you know, I just don't know that Alvarez is going to hit for that much more average than Langoliers. And runs ribbies is going to be different too. So I'm not saying they're a 1-to-1. I just go ahead, Ray.
And you got to love the fact that we've now, in addition to the 5 on this board, we've mentioned 3 other guys, and we have not yet mentioned Sal Perez, who used to be C1, right? He's got to fit into this conversation at some point too. So I'm just glad we have options at the position, right? Remember the days not too long ago when if you would see one catcher go in the first 10 rounds. This is not that draft board anymore.
There's 25 catchers worth drafting next year, which is not something we're used to.
Yeah, we haven't even talked about both Contrerases, the Contreras.
Yeah,
you mentioned Sal Perez. Yainer Diaz going to stay catcher eligible and hopefully DH a bunch next year still for them or play first. Was Abreu? No, Abreu was a multi-year deal. God, that sucked. Yeah, I'm still going to be hyping up Tyler Stevenson next year, so get used to that, folks. I'm never going anywhere on him. Pour some out for Dalton Varsho. He's no longer going to be catcher eligible, but
Either will MJ Melendez.
That's right. So we lose those 2 guys to the outfield, but the guys that we gained, I think it was a fair trade-off. Jonah Heim really ascended up the board this year. I mentioned Langoliers. I'm still in on Gabriel Moreno, Alejandro Kirk, his former teammate. So yeah, Kyber Ruiz, lots of ways to go at catcher. Let's talk Walker Buehler. He's in the 7th round here, taking the speculation on him. You want to talk about somebody who could be that dynamic 3-inning type guy in the playoffs? That's Walker Buehler. Like, I think that they're going to really look at him as somebody like that. And we were talking about this yesterday on the RotoWire, Scott and Jeff, and I was in the chat there, and how their bullpen could go from kind of wobbly right now as it stands to in the playoffs when they're going to put Pepio, Sheehan, and Buehler in the bullpen. That could be a disgusting bullpen. But anyway, with Buehler going in the 7th round, did that take you by surprise, Justin?
Yes, just because at this point, he had not pitched, right?
Yeah.
Like now he's had a rehab assignment.
He's on rehab.
He reported looked really, really good in his first action.
Would he go higher in a redraft right now,
think
do you think?
Might. He's going to go higher than I'm going to be willing to draft him, I think is what I'm
What is your high right now? Let's say he does fill that role.
I think 7 is too high for me. Like,
okay, so you're already out if he's around this level.
I'd never draft these guys coming off of Tommy John.
Yeah.
There's just so much that can go wrong with the command and control, which is typically the last thing to come back.
But what about, are you not heartened that like some of that is going to be worked out this year?
I mean, I am heartened a little bit. I still am not going to be heartened enough to draft him as high as he's going to go.
Okay, that's fair because I'm with you. You know, I was talking about not drafting TJ returners either.
Yeah.
I do want to see where he's at. You know, Buehler working through the playoffs, working down the stretch here. Probably not going to get all of it out, but maybe with spring and an off season to work. I don't know. He's an interesting case because he is going to have the little time of return here, assuming he stays healthy and everything goes well for Buehler, and then an off season.
If he's really good in these short stretches, right, on prime time in the playoffs, as we know the Dodgers are going to go, like the price, he's going to be a 3rd, 4th round pick next year, and
he's already one of the biggest playoff tax guys of recent years. I think Justin's right though. I'm not saying that it is right. I think Justin is right though that if we do see Buehler go crazy, the playoff tax will hit him yet again. And he's been a playoff tax victim before because he's been excellent as a playoff pitcher, Walker Buehler has. Ray, what'd you think of seeing Buehler in the 7th there? Like Justin points out, he had not pitched yet when this draft went.
I mean, even if everything goes well for him in the next 2 months, and I certainly hope it does, he's got to be innings limited next year.
You would think.
Because if nothing else, even if he goes through without setbacks, without dead arm in June, whatever else happens, the Dodgers are going to be protecting him for next October, and they'll be trying to bleed his whatever his innings limit is, 150, 160, whatever. They're going to be wanting to save 30 of those for next October. He's going to be limited during the regular season. Kershaw's not on this board, Give me Kershaw before Buehler all that.
Especially at the round cost. Yeah, absolutely. Like, because Kershaw just keeps getting it done, and I don't really have any reason to believe that he won't continue to do so. And when you bake in the innings lost, because
they're both going to have innings
at.
lost, but I'm not worried about Kershaw's command and control.
Exactly. No, that's a great call out, and I totally agree that I would rather Kershaw at the discount, even if it's 2 rounds. Like, even if he went in the next round or 2 rounds later, fine. Closing out here, any final takeaways from this 7-round draft? We'll have a picture posted in the in the show notes too, so people can follow along with this. I probably should have mentioned that at the outset, but they'll see the link in there. Justin, start with you. Any takeaways here? You know, Adolis Garcia in the 3rd, Michael Harris all the way back up to the 3rd. Anything jump out to you as a takeaway?
You were going to pay a stiff price for young pitching. You were going for the Bobby Millers and the Yuri Perez,
Grayson Rodriguez.
Like, you were going to pay a top 100 price, and some of them are going to definitely be worth it. Some of them definitely not.
Can you tell me which, please?
I mean, I think Yuri's going to be worth it. I think Bobby Miller is going to be worth it.
No, I meant with certainty though, because I agree with you. I like both those guys too, but I wish we knew exactly, because I think Grayson is too, and those are the 3 that went in this draft. And like, it is a steep price. I love all 3, but what's the likelihood that all 3 actually do pan out? Probably not.
No,
probably not going to happen that all 3 are perfect 7-round guys.
I hate to bump up their price any further than they're already going to be bumped up. But if you want one of those guys, you're going to have to just jump on them. Like, you're going to just have to go get your guy earlier than other people. And there are going to be enough people who do this in these early drafts that all of a sudden you're going to start seeing these guys in the 5th, 6th round. And that is scary as hell. Yeah, no, I totally understand that. You got to pay for your guys, especially in the NFBC landscape. Everyone knows their home league, better, so they might not have that same issue. But if you get in this NFBC landscape next year, get your guys, pay for them if you want them, because you're putting up the money. Get the guys that you are betting on. Ray, what were any final takeaways from this draft?
Mike Trout in round 6 just hurts my heart.
I know.
But back to Justin's earlier point, if Ohtani goes up the freeway to the Dodgers and frees up the DH, and Trout
that's a good point.
Lineup that way, maybe that could be a bargain.
That's actually a good point there. With Trout getting some DH, Ohtani leaving is an avenue to maybe save some Trout health. No way he plays center next year, right? Or I shouldn't say no way. Do we think he plays center next year, Trout? Justin?
I don't think he plays on the Angels next year.
That's in play.
Whoa, that's a take. Ray, I don't think you can top that take, but what do you think? Do you think Trout plays a lot of center next year?
I don't think he plays a lot of center. I think he's a corner outfield DH. They have to keep him in the lineup. And yeah, I'm with Justin. I think that the 5 minutes after Ohtani leaves, what is Trout's
dismantle
conversation has to get started in earnest.
You got to get value and just. I
mean,
can you?
No, you just unload the salary.
Yeah,
and who can afford him? Baltimore.
That would be so sick. Because they could give one decent player, right?
You throw Jordan Westgate just to placate them.
Yeah. You throw a Westberg, you throw a Mayo, you throw some one piece, which won't hurt their system at all. That would be interesting. Right. They use that as a free agent signing, and they bring in Trout. I don't know. There could be some crazy machinations there if they decide. Because I think they're almost certainly losing Ohtani. I mean, I could say certainly, but we'll just say almost certainly to protect it.
I will say he has a full no trade clause.
So he's in charge.
Yeah, right. But where would he accept it? He might accept it to Baltimore.
I could see him accepting Baltimore because that's not too far from that's not too far to get up to Philly where he loves to be and go to his games. He'll get more unique weather out there. We know he's a big weatherhead. So we could see Trout on the move. That would be really interesting. That would really shake up the offseason if Ohtani and Trout are both gone from the Angels by then. But this 7-round draft was awesome. We'll be drafting together in a few months here. Let's talk a little bit about First Pitch Arizona. Ray, can you give us a rundown of what people can expect? We talk about it all the time. It's not even like a paid advertisement when we do it. We just are obsessed with First Pitch. So we're always gassing it up. But from somebody who helps put on this event with Brent Hershey, can you give us a little rundown of what to expect with First Pitch Arizona?
Yeah, I think over the years, the best way we've come up with to describe it is just an immersive weekend experience of just 24/7 fantasy baseball.
Yep.
As a thumbnail sketch, this year we're actually starting early. We're going to start on Thursday afternoon and have a couple of like pre-conference sessions. But basically, we bounce back and forth from doing conference sessions in the hotel over mostly across the street to go to ball games, go to home run derby, go to the Fall Stars game. We wake up in the morning, we do a few hours in the hotel, we head out to the ballparks, we come back, we record podcasts, we have more breakout sessions, we play a little poker or whatever else is going on in the hotel. We exchange some craft beers. There's all sorts of fun stuff going on indoors and outdoors. But it's, if you're on the ground for, I don't know, a little more than 72 hours in most cases, you'll probably sleep for 6, 8, 10 of those. But other than that, it's, fantasy baseball all the time. And, it's sort of become this 2-part event where we have the sort of paid regular attendees who are coming to get insights from all of us, but it's also become this industry networking event. And the two overlay so well that you can end up sitting next to any of the three of us or any of the other, 40 or 50 speakers at a ballpark, just shooting the breeze, with pulling your fantasy roster out of your pocket and asking somebody to look at it. Everybody is, I don't know, I can only give credit to Ron Chandler and Rick Wilton for establishing the ethos of this event, but everyone is so approachable and everybody's putting forth their best work. And even though they're all websites that theoretically compete with each other and we compete with each other in all leagues, in our leagues, et cetera, everyone just, puts their best insights on the table and brings their best research and best analysis to the event for everyone to consume. And you can't possibly fly home on Sunday afternoon not being a better and more knowledgeable player than you were when you arrived on Thursday.
It's unbelievable. And like the one thing I would constantly underscore is please don't not want to come because you don't know anybody. That will be fixed immediately. Totally. You will be invited into any group you want to go up to and talk to, whether it's with industry people that you might feel intimidated by. Please don't. We're just random dweebs that love baseball the way you do, or if it's other people that are there as players as opposed to industry folks. You'll find an in-group that you want to get with, but there's no like clicks either. It's not like, oh, you can't be here, you can't be there. You can be anywhere you want. We've had so many people come over the years that didn't really know anybody. They came maybe with one friend or nobody, and they just were like, I think I'll go, and they end up loving it. And then they're back multiple years. They've made friends. They've expanded their fantasy friend group. So, I just can't say enough about it. It is the greatest event I go to every year. We gas it up for a reason. It's amazing. Justin, you want to give some thoughts on First Pitch Arizona as we gush about the greatness of it?
I think you nailed it when you said it's the best event of the year. It is I literally moved a family vacation to Disneyland to a different date so I could go this year.
Because your wife comes too, so it is like a family. Both y'all enjoy it. She obviously she plays more these days, but like her first time there, she wasn't even playing fantasy. She came to hang out.
And she's not anticipating playing at all any fantasy baseball at all next year. Yet she's
coming still not going to miss it.
Yeah, and she's coming and she's going to go to the actual conferences and panels as well. So mostly probably probably to just harass me for the most part, but
which is what she should be doing. Yes,
that's exactly. Her job. So,
but it is. I think it is the best event to go to if you play fantasy baseball, and I am always shocked that there isn't more and more people every year. And I think, COVID probably...
No, there is more and more. You're saying they should be even higher because the numbers do seem to go up every year. Obviously, COVID took a hit on things and undercut everything.
There should be 3 times as many people as there are because it is like... I love the panels and I'm on the panels, right? So like I'm not, and I love the games. But like for me, like I've learned so much just sitting around talking to people and just soaking up knowledge from some of the best players and analysts in the world. With those informal conversations with guys like Vlad Sedler and Rob Silver and Matt Modica and Paul and Jason and Ray and Brent and Ryan Bloomfield, like those informal conversations are just so enriching and like you can't put a price tag on them. So I've mentioned you need to be there. Like you should be there.
I've mentioned this before, but Tim McLeod, our resident Asian baseball correspondent,
Mhm.
has put me on guys well before they
Yeah.
became a thing. I knew Kenta Maeda. I knew who he was because he took him in like the 12th round of a draft. I said, who is that? First off, he's Canadian, so he's instantly nice. It was during the break of our draft. I was like, who's this guy? I've seen the name once, and he gave me a full rundown on him. Take all those mental notes. We know what Kenta Maeda has become. This is before he came over. And it's not just Maeda, by the way. He's in on all of the guys. He knows all of the ones. He knows the guys that might flop too. He gives you all the great hits there. So it's like everything is there. If you love baseball, everything is there. The time spent talking to Kylie McDaniel or Eric Longenhagen about prospects, the stuff I learned there. Nick Pollock sitting there learning on how to watch pitchers better, right? Like I love watching pitching and I care about it. Like he pitched in college. Nick's on another level. Like he sees things differently than a lot of us will. And so it's just a great event. baseballhq.com/seminar, I think. Or no, /first-pitch-Arizona. We'll have a link. Of course, you can get there. All the info. When's the next price change to sign up, Ray?
Yeah, so you can actually just go to baseballhq.com. There's a giant First Pitch Arizona logo on the right side of the home page.
And again, we'll have a
You
link
can click on
directly
that.
for it.
Yeah, the dates are November 2nd to 5th, so you can clear out Halloween at home before you head over. Everyone can bring their candy, and we'll exchange that stuff too. But yeah, the next price deadline is this Friday, September 8th. It's currently $429 for the weekend, and that's going to jump on Saturday to the full and final price, which is $559. So you can save $130 or so by registering by Friday. The hotel room block is still open and available for another couple of weeks, so you can, after you book the conference, you can go book your hotel room, you can go track down your flights, etc. You're not late. There's plenty of room to do that still. So jump on in. Like you said, Paul, it grows bigger and bigger every year, but we want to completely blow the roof off the thing. So come join us, and we can just about guarantee a good time, right?
Yeah, I really think we can. It'd be hard to have a bad time. You're coming in as a baseball fan, as a fantasy player. Going to be really hard for you not to get your money's worth. Learn a lot of stuff, make new friends, and just have a wonderful time. It's November 2nd through the 5th, 2023 in Arizona. I think we're going to be in Mesa. If you want to stay at the main hotel, you can stay anywhere you want, get to everything, if you don't want to stay at the main hotel, but
stay at the
if you have any questions, if you can, please do, because it's way better to just be there. And then that's where you have those late nights where we're sitting up. If you like to drink and hang out, that's always going on. People bringing all sorts of cool drinks too. Like Eno's known for bringing crazy, all sorts of different beers, all sorts of different alcohol. So if that's something that you're big time into, you can have a lot of fun with that. And of course, once people kind of get the lubrication going, that's when the friendliness is even at a higher level there too. So it's just great. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to Ray on Twitter. You can reach out to, is it Ray
Absolutely.
HQ? At Ray HQ.
At Ray HQ. Yep.
You can reach out to Ray. You can reach out to us too. We'll answer any questions about it. We love the event. It's wonderful. Ray, thank you so much for being on with us, especially on a holiday here on Labor Day. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me on, guys, and looking forward to seeing you both in person in 8 weeks or so.
Sounds wonderful. Justin, I'll talk to you later this week.
Take it easy.